The oral tradition of storytelling is the oldest of all of our traditions. Long before the flute, the rattle, and even the drum, there were storytellers. And unlike today, those storytellers were not thought of as just entertainers. They were teachers and historians. Having no written language, it was storytelling that preserved our legends, our history, and much of our culture. But storytelling was also used as a method of teaching the young ones, and sometimes reminding the not-so-young ones how to live in a good way.
All right, you guys, we are live. We are back Friday before the break. We're going to let my Uncle Winston here get right to it with an opening prayer. So
it's good. Oh, yeah, you're going to sit up. Ninanaskumtanan Mr. Hiki Koyo Chehia Kastogisira Utamana Nianan Mr. We promote you a quaki Yapokoka Pericherinan. We need your help every day, Father. We're so glad that you're with us every day. Kastogisira no ton. Hey, Mr. Hiki Koyo Chehia.
all right. Thank you, Uncle. All right, you guys, we are back Friday. It is February 12th. Almost Valentine's Day.
Are you ready for Valentine's Day?
If I had a girlfriend, I would be.
You'd be all over it.
Every day would be her Valentine's Day.
There you go, ladies.
Every day. All right. So we got a guest coming on today, Uncle.
Yes, he should be here getting on. He's not coming here. He's taken out of his own house.
Yeah.
Should be on there any second.
He's on Indian time.
He must be on Indian time. Yep.
That's okay.
Yeah. So how are you? How's things?
Well, pretty good. They're actually pretty good. You know, like we've we've been doing so much work by Zoom, and like every day I'm just working, and sometimes I don't finish till 10 o'clock at night because with Kelowna, sometimes it goes 2 hours. Last night it went for about half an hour, about 20 minutes. And what I did is I read the children a story about Wisaki, and that was, and Joe Nitaho had something to do with it, I'm not sure what, but also another guy from down east. Oh, they had a few people on really beautiful drawings and everything. That the guy was an artist that's making it, and he just found his way back to his Indian heritage. I can't remember his name. Anyway, that was, and then after that, I waited for any questions, but there were no questions. So sometimes there's lots of people there, and sometimes there's nobody there. And I helped them start. I helped them start an Indigenous school for the youth. And
Really?
so what? Yeah. So what they want is they want so many things in Cree. They started off wanting it in Métis, but then the elder for the group told them, you know what? There's nobody speaks Métis. Everybody speaks Cree. Just put it in Cree. But still at the same time, I have songs in Métis, so I sing those old songs sometimes.
Yeah.
And they were written by Pierre Falcon, who was the Métis poet of the plains in Manitoba here. And so this year, like I'm in the Native veterans, the Aboriginal veterans, and when we march this year, I have a friend who's a Métis, and boy, those guys really fought hard for their land all the time. So I asked him, I said, can we include a Métis as an Aboriginal veteran when we go and Veterans Day, Remembrance Day for the veterans? And he said, yes. He said, for sure. He said, we can do that. So we're going to do that. And it's going to be the first time he's going to wear a military uniform. Anyway, so that was something. We're busy all the time. And this is one of the things I really like. Nikki, you are such a good podcaster. I was just thinking about you. Sound just like your mother. You sound strong. You sound focused. You're talking about horses. I was just trying to sit back as far as I could and just listen, both ears like this. And I really enjoyed that. So just don't stop.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's but once I start talking about horses, I just go. I have a runaway, so
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing.
I'm actually going to get her working on. I'm going to get her starting on her own podcast that's directed with horses and her healing energy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My goal, my
heart. Oh boy.
My goal is to get as many Indigenous podcasters podcasting. That's my goal. We're actually next week doing a 2-day. If anyone's paying attention, go find our page. It's called Indigenous Podcasts Worldwide. And we're going to bring awareness to Indigenous podcasters for 2 days. We're going live for 12 hours straight, 2 days in a row. So 24 hours, and we're bringing awareness to all the Indigenous people that are podcasting.
Yeah. Well, yesterday when I listened to Todd Baptiste, I thought to myself, now there is a guy that runs horses, chuck wagons, and Calgary Stampede, and he had so much traditional knowledge. Just the way he spoke, you could listen to him for a couple hours straight. He was and Nikki felt that too, didn't you, Nikki? Because you said, and you go, please don't stop. You said at one point, and yeah. So that's and Nikki, you're one of those kind of people. You're just growing into that kind of a person, and you were just spot on like that. But yeah, that's a good idea, and good luck, because that's needed in education, in religion, in policing, and in government. That's needed very badly.
This is kind of a cool way to reach out to people, and I never really thought too much about it, like for myself to be a part of it, but I'm here as doing my practicum, and Nathan just said, well, we're going to be doing some podcasting. And I mean, I wasn't comfortable, I'll have to be honest. And, but it's getting a little easier, and I can see how it's a really good platform to get through to people and be able to share and bring on people with their knowledge. And I'm really enjoying it. I think it's good.
We've been reaching the masses on these things. I think we're averaging about 1,500 to 3,500 per video. So I mean,
it just started.
Yeah, you reach so many people.
So long as the right people hear it, because we have many. Like I was the elder at Pembina Trail School Division, And there was a young girl. I walked into the class one day, and she came right up to me, and she pinned a button on my jacket. And I said, "What is that?" She said, "That's for Truth and Reconciliation." And Truth and Reconciliation right now has been mandated by the Canadian government to be in every school, taught in every school. And so that's really good. And here in Manitoba, they have developed programs that are mandated to be in every school in Manitoba, and they are. And that was my brother, Lauren Keeper, that started that. And he worked for a big organization, and he had the power to do that. So that's what happened. We have the power. We just have to do it, and we won't do it for money. We won't do it for land. We won't do it to be better than anybody else. We'll do it because we need that. We need that in our hearts. We need it in our minds. We need that where we live, because that's so important to honor where we live. And so it has to happen.
You got a comment here from Azure, who's from Onion Lake. Dance Winston, we met when you came to visit the school in Onion Lake.
Oh, Tance Azure.
Azure
Johnson.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful name.
Yeah. She's got one of her boys is her oldest one. He's a professional powwow guy. He's his name's Tyler, I think. Real awesome kid, young man, I guess now. So
yeah.
But all her boys are.
The actor that has Peanut Butter and Marmalade, I think it is, or Moose Meat and Marmalade. I forget what the show is, but his name is Art Napoleon, and he does really good work. But his sister is a doctor, and she is at University of Victoria, and she has an all native program in the language, and you can go there and you can get degrees that you can't get anywhere else. And one of the things that I've been working on is to get degrees for all the powwow dancers and singers, because they are the experts in that kind of thing, and that is music. We are the only classical musicians here. We are the true classical musicians. We're classical musicians with our powwow singing, our dancing, our history, our legends, our stories. Kakioki, why? And so they're working on that in Victoria. And Darlene Auger, who is from Saskatchewan, Alberta, and I think she's already she's got her master's in something, or she has a degree. She's a doctor, and what she does, she has her doctorate in Webinasun. The swing, using the swing, the baby swing.
Yeah.
And she went out and she got that, and she wrote the parameters for the course. She got the background information, everything. And so that's what you can do, and that's what I want to tell young people, that you can get a degree in powwow singing, because they are masters. The only one in the world can do that like they do it. They're the masters, and they can get a degree. They can get a bachelor in music, in Indian music, and they can go and teach in native schools all across Canada, or they can even go into white schools and teach in there.
Where is that, in Victoria?
Yeah, Victoria, and her name is Dr. Dr. Napoleon. I forget her first name.
Wow, a degree in powwow singing. That's yes. How its life should be. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to do that, and but it's so much work. Now I'm glad that Robert Willett is here, because that's what he does. He's got 2 doctorates and 2 masters, and part of that is setting up educational systems.
Yeah,
to do that.
We've been looking forward to Indigenous storytelling, so happy to see this being available for Alberta and Saskatchewan. Yeah. It's available for anybody across the world who's got Wi-Fi, but if you're battling Res Wi-Fi like we do once in a while, we're at the school, so we got the faster Wi-Fi, but when I'm at my house, man, I battle hard with that Res Wi-Fi. It's like, you never know. It's a hit and miss.
The horse backs up against the house, and that's it.
Yeah, no doubt, eh? Just so you guys are tuning in, we are waiting for our guest Robert Ouellette. Is it Robert Falcon Ouellette?
Yeah,
actually,
cousin Robert Falcon Ouellette.
And he's actually an XMP for Winnipeg, and he's going to be joining us today and telling his story of his background in the Battle of the Patoche and his Métis side, and
yeah. Well, he considered himself an Indian because he was born in Red. His dad comes from Red Pheasant, His dad.
Is that the Watney, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, his mother was Mariah
Mm,
Watani, and then
yeah.
she became a Wallet, and so he has his status from Red Pheasant, and so does Robert. But
Yeah.
he knows that the Métis side of him, and he's really working hard on the Indian side, and taking Cree lessons, and he speaks about 4 languages, and so he's
Ah,
doing good and a very exciting guy. So he's not going to take it here. He's
he's
going to.
on right now. So we're
Oh,
gonna
good.
yeah,
No.
he's
Oh,
here. We're gonna
yeah.
let you guys get right to it. You guys,
Oh,
we're gonna
that's
be
it,
sitting in
right.
the background and you guys
All right.
have fun.
Robert,
Welcome.
we knew you'd make it. We didn't know when. But yeah, so
Oh,
this
I'm
is
really sorry about that. We had a little trouble hooking up the links there.
okay. This is Dr. Robert Willett, and he is in the Indian way. He is my son, because in the Indian way, when his father died, I was his father's first cousin, so I am now his father in the Indian way. Or so, like I used to call old Harry Brabab Pun. He was Dad's first cousin, and when Dad died, then I called him No Chawis, the same thing
No
that Robert called.
chawis.
Yeah, No Chawis, same thing that you call me. But Robert, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, your education, and your stints in government, and history, and
Sure.
your books that you've written, and the stories that you tell? And you can, at one point, you can tell that story about Moisey. Well, but don't start out with that first. Start out with first your education and your books you've written and everything that you do. So
Well,
people.
I'll just thank you very much, Notawis, Winston. I think I'm from Red Pheasant. My family. My grandmother is Mariah Watani. So very proud about that. But I grew up in Calgary. And growing up, it was there was a lot of love. I had a good dad and a good mom, but sometimes it was also very difficult. We were homeless, my mom and me and my brother at one point. So we actually lived on the streets in Winnipeg for a summer, and we traveled around camping. And it was me when I was a kid. I was quite young, 9 years old. It was actually, I thought it was actually quite a bit of fun. Until we kind of got to September, and I wasn't yet in school at the end of September, and I was complaining to my mom, it's getting really cold at night and the sleeping bags aren't very warm. So it made my mother a little upset. So then she found some help, and then we ended up kind of finding some housing. So sometimes people think, oh, you're a doctor, you had things very easy. In fact, sometimes actually it was very difficult in life, but nonetheless, you have to keep pushing forward no matter what it is that you do. And in this case, later on, I was, I joined the military, and there was a lot of other stuff that went on, how I got there. But at 19, I joined the Army or the Navy, and I was in that for a few years, and then I joined the Army, and I ended up being posted to Quebec City. And in Quebec City, they forced me to, I needed to learn French. J'avais besoin de parler français, d'apprendre la langue de Molière. So I just said I had to learn French to speak the language of Molière, who is like the Shakespeare of the French people. I didn't have a really great time. I was actually with the Royal 22nd Regiment. And my first experience with them is when I arrived, you have to come to attention. And very strong. And the commanding officer, I was called into his room, and you stand at attention and you salute, and you yell out your name, Corporal Willett, A19823-967, reporting for duty, sir. And then he says, there are 3 things that we don't like in this regiment. And he slams his hand on the desk. Bang! And he says, we don't like Indians, we don't like women, and we don't like English people in our regiment. So get the beep out of my office. Warrant officer, take him somewhere else. I don't want to see him around here. And so that was my experience with the Royal 22nd Regiment. Later on, though, I learned that Notawis Winston, or Elder Winston, was actually in the same regiment as me. He had actually gone through the exact same experience as me 20 years earlier. and it, you know, I don't know if you know this, Notawis, but he, you know, I went to see my chief warrant officer, who's like the top non-commissioned member in the unit. You know, he's up here at the top, and he tells you what to do, and you're supposed to do it. And if you don't do it, they get very mad at you. They might charge you, or you know, put you in military prison or something. And and I said, oh, you know, I was, you know, you've been in this regiment for 37 years. Do you know Winston What's-in-he? And he's like, oh, yes, there was that, wasn't that crazy Indian that used to play clarinet and guitar? So Winston was well known. I don't know if you know that one.
I didn't know.
No. So you had you know, like, I guess a bit of a reputation as a rabble rouser, or someone who was causing, you know, who didn't fit the usual mode. And you know, to be honest, I was quite proud to, you know, to follow in those footsteps. I was like, oh, you know, I wasn't the first one, but nonetheless, I will continue on with that tradition. And it was, you know, I had, it was some difficult moments, I have to admit, but eventually I left that unit and I went somewhere else. I went to go teach, because I'd actually, when I was younger, between 18 and 22, I had in my own time earned a bachelor's degree in education. And then I'd also, you know, after I'd left the military in 2004, full time, I was in the reserves, and I went and I was doing my master's degree. So I have a master's degree in education, another master's degree in education. And then I was working, eventually I got another job at the First Nations Education Council of Quebec, which is kind of like, represents 24 communities across Quebec in French and in English. And because I spoke French, they hired me. And because I was First Nations, they also said, come on board. And so I was helping out there. And you know, and I kind of saw that there was more, you know, a need for more Indigenous people who had PhDs. And so what I ended up doing is applying for a PhD program in Laval, and I was accepted. And in 3 years later, I had beaten the record in the anthropology department of graduating, because usually it's about a 7 to 10 year program, and I did mine in 3 years. I knew exactly, you know, what I wanted to do, but it wasn't even me. Actually, a lot of times, actually, I think a lot of what we do is actually, you know, kind of in our blood. It's, you know, there was no time for me to be wasting, you know, oh, maybe I'm going to do this. Like a lot of other students, they kind of study a little this, and then they're over here and over here and over here. You can see my hands doing that. But that's kind of what a lot of the other students do. And I was, you know, I think from my ancestors, they, you know, they were guiding me, and they were telling me, you know, go straight. This is how straight you're going to be, and don't waste any time. So, you know, I beat their records, and I became the second person in the 350-year history of Laval University in Quebec City, which is one of the oldest Francophone university in North America, to graduate with a PhD. And, you know, I'm proud to represent Red Pheasant Cree Nation out in Quebec. And then eventually I moved to Winnipeg in 2010. And then I got to meet this wonderful gentleman, Notawis Winston, and his lovely wife, Babaji, Jerry, and hang out and meet some other relations who I'd missed an awful lot. You know, there's nothing like the prairies. There's something in the soil. And I remember getting off the plane. I hadn't been back to, you know, the prairies in, you know, almost 5-6 years, I think. And I remember, you know, getting, like, even it was a cold winter day, like how it is today. It was, you know, at the airport in Winnipeg, and the air, it was just, you could feel that was your air. And that was the air that your ancestors had been breathing, because the soil breathes into the air, and it gives it an aroma, you know, a beautiful odor, a smell, which is quite unique. You know, it doesn't smell like that in Quebec. The forests don't smell the same. You know, the winter doesn't smell the same. The snow doesn't feel the same. There is something I find really special about, you know, about the prairies, and about these lands that, you know, our families had roamed on as princes of the plains for centuries and thousands of years. Anyways, I keep talking, Winston, but I don't want to.
No, that's fine. But Robert, I told him that you had 2 doctorates. You only mentioned 1 doctorate.
Oh, actually, I only have 1 doctorate. I have 2 master's degrees.
Oh, okay. And you've written how
Sorry
many?
to disappoint you. I'll have to go back and get another one.
Okay. And how many books have you written?
No, I only have I have a master's in education, master's in music, and a PhD in anthropology.
But right now you're you're setting up university type.
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm working at a place called Yellow Quill College here in Winnipeg. It's a small Indigenous controlled university or college that we have in the city, and it's the only one in Manitoba. And what I'm trying to do is to turn it into a university college. There's a team of us that are working together, and there's some challenges, sometimes with ourselves and sometimes with the larger system. But what we're trying to do is create a program which can, a university, because we don't have one in Manitoba, which is for Indigenous peoples. There's lots of universities, like University of St. Boniface for the Francophones, the Canadian Mennonite University, the Booths University College, which is for the Salvation Army, even has its own university. University of Winnipeg, University of Manitoba, Providence University College, which is a religious university south of the city of Winnipeg, even University College of the North here in Manitoba. But there's no Indigenous controlled, focused on our own needs and our own history, our own understanding of the world. So what I'm trying to do is create a college and have a bit of experience doing that. I helped create a college that we have in Quebec called CUNA, which has been existing now for over 10 years, but it's a small French-English First Nations college run by the First Nations Education Council, and I helped write the strategic plan for that. And I'm trying to do the same thing here in Winnipeg, build something that our people, my children and our great grandchildren will be able to use and say, oh, like someone was here before and did well. We can do this.
Yes, and there's something that I should point out to you, Robert. Nathan, his very close relative, I think maybe his niece, is one of the smartest that all the big universities in the United States want her to go to their university because she's so intelligent. And she's part Gray Eyes, part Watani, and one other blood in there. You know who I'm talking about, Nathan, huh? Oh, okay, I guess he's gone. But
no, we're here. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Come back.
Yeah, we're just watching in the background. We have to remove our mics when we're watching you guys.
Okay, Nathan, tell us a little bit about her, because Robert should know her, because when he gets to be prime minister, he's going to need all the native people that are well educated to
shave my mustache.
Help him run the country.
I can't, honestly, I'm trying to recall the name right now. I'm in the midst of doing something else right now while we speak, so I'll do a little research and get back to you.
It's the solar lights there. It's the northern lights behind you.
All right.
Well, one of the things is Robert and I were always discussing different things. And whatever I know, I tell him that. And one of the things that I told him was just recently I was talking with Duke Redbird, and he said Duke Redbird, incidentally, was the poet of the year about 30 years ago. And they were in India. And he was at the Taj Mahal with every country sent a poet to the Taj Mahal. Every country in the world sent a poet there. And on the second day, one of the people that was organizers came down and told all the poets, we need one poet to represent the whole world. Who do you want to pick as the one poet? And everybody said, Duke Redbird. So Duke was a poet of the world for 1 year. For 1 day in India. And I'm just going to blow my own horn here. Duke and I worked together for about 3 years in Ottawa and all over in North America. Duke did poetry, and I played guitar for him. So it got to the point where I could write immediately a song, and I can still do that today. I can write a song immediately. But anyway, what he told me, and I told Robert, and I told many people so far, and I'll tell all of you what Duke says. We have to start becoming better ancestors. When the kids 100 years from now look back at us, what they'll see is this program here, and they'll say Nathan Watani was was the podcaster, and Nikki Willett was sitting
Instigator.
talking, and Winston Watney was there, and Robert Willett was there, and there's many people there. And he said, so what we have to do is every day we have to do better than what we've ever done before. So I've got 20 years left until I'm 100. And so for these next 20 years, that's what I'm going to work on. It's being a better ancestor. So I am right now for Robert and his children. I am the children's grandfather. And so Robert and I, we get together. I learn lots from him, and he learns lots from me. And it's a really beautiful relationship we have. And like he said, he calls my wife Baba G. My children do anyway. He calls her Jerry, but because she's Ukrainian, and in her language, grandmother is Baba, and I think that's in many languages, German too. But Baba G because her name is Jerry. But Robert knows so much too, and he tells a story that is absolutely incredible. When he tells that story, everybody's sitting like this, and even the teachers are just hanging on to each other like this. Their eyes are wide open. And he would hope you'll tell that story during this session somewhere.
Sure, yeah, I'll tell it. Do you want me to tell it right now?
If you want to, sure.
Yeah.
We have lots of time.
Well, Azura wants us to sing a song, so I will sing a song in a few minutes. But
Okay.
I'll tell the story of my family, where they're from. So the name Willets, it's a French name, and it comes from Quebec. So there was this gentleman that got off a boat in Quebec City, actually, in 1634, I believe it was, in Quebec City. His name was René Willette. And, he found himself a wife, and then he moved to a place called River Well, which is actually like just the beginning, Ouell. It's where the family kind of had a large farm. And he had a number of children, I think 14 or 15 children. And then one of those children's name was Joseph. And then he had a son as well. And that boy was named Joseph. And Joseph, after the conquest by the English, he was a voyageur, so one of those voyageurs that used to, travel on, canoeing, trading the furs. So he ended up, after the conquest in 1759 on the Plains of Abraham, when the French were defeated in North America by the English, by General Wolfe and the General Montcalm, which was the French general, and General Wolfe was the English general in the 7-Year War, waging between Europe and between the European powers. I guess he, was looking for work, things to do. So he was traveling around, and he was in a place called Fort William. And he had met a young lady, and her name was Angelique. And Angelique was an Assiniboine lady. And, they ended up getting married and having children. And they had a son named Joseph, who had another son named Joseph, who had another son named Joseph. There is a method to the madness here. And what ended up happening is that Joseph was actually here in the Red River in 1870 and 1869. And, I don't know if people know the history of Manitoba, but in 1869, Canada had just been formed as a country. And the Hudson's Bay Company had sold their territory, Rupert's Land, as they called it, the Northwest Territories, to Canada for a couple $1 million. And they said, here, Canada, this is yours. Give us some money. We own this land. We own everything that drains into the Hudson's Bay. And all the people who are living there, all the indigenous peoples, the Indians, the Métis, they are all they all work for the Hudson's Bay, or they are under the control of the Hudson's Bay Company, and now they're under the control of Canada. And Canada had sent some surveyors to the Red River colony and started parceling out the land in the English way. Like the big squares, a nice little square here, a square here, a square here, squares everywhere. They were doing a Lego type thing, dividing up the land. And I guess what happened was there was a confrontation with a gentleman named Lajamodière, I believe, and he was a French gentleman. He was farming his land, just kind of working some crops. He was a Métis person, and he ended up getting in an argument with these English people because they didn't speak French and he didn't, or they didn't speak Michif, they didn't speak Cree, they didn't speak any of the languages that the Métis people could speak back then. They only spoke English, and he didn't speak very much English. So he had to get a guy named Louis Riel. And Louis Riel came along and told them to bugger off, go back to where they were from. They weren't permitted to be on this land. It was indigenous land, and they needed to respect the people who were living here. And Canada did not own the territory. And so Joseph Ouellette, he was 70 at that time, or 68 years old. He ended up sitting on kind of the very first council with Louis Riel because he was an elder, giving him some advice and telling him, keep going, don't give up. Louis, we trust you. You speak English, you speak French, you speak some other languages. We believe in you. Keep going. And that was kind of his role as an elder. And then, eventually they negotiated the entry of Manitoba into Confederation. The Métis were betrayed by the Canadian government. And then after that, they signed treaty, the very first treaty in 1870, after the entry of Manitoba into Confederation here just out in Winnipeg. And then Treaty 2, Treaty 3, all the way out to Treaty 6. In the meantime, Joe Ouellette and his son Moise were in Winnipeg, and a lot of the land was being stolen, taken from them. There was something actually called the Reign of Terror. I don't know if anyone's heard about this. They had these soldiers from Eastern Canada, these British, some German mercenaries, people who were looking for their fortune, and they came out to Manitoba. And their goal wasn't really based on peace. Their goal was to, take as much as they can to make themselves wealthy. Mm-hmm. And so they ended up, creating this reign of terror where it was literally lawlessness. Before, you had a very peaceful society where you had, First Nations, Métis, working with Celtic peoples. Everyone was kind of existing within their own communities, but also interacting in a good way with each other. And it ended up becoming, there were rapings, there were killings, and a lot of the Métis and a lot of the First Nations kind of fled the area. They said, you know what, we're not going to stick around, and they've named it aptly, the Reign of Terror, because it was terrifying, so terrifying that people left everything behind, like Joseph Ouellette and Moise, his son, and they moved to a place called Batoche. Just a couple hours away from Battleford, and so they're at Batoche, and there's more and more over time they're still doing the buffalo hunting. They're interacting with the First Nations people, intermarrying. Everyone's doing their own thing, living their life of freedom. That that is natural to a person. Our life of of who we are is our essential selves. And what ended up happening was, the English are arriving. They're starting to, this is our land, this is this. And, there were certain rights that weren't being respected. And the Métis were getting nervous. The French were getting nervous about it. So they grouped Moise Ouellette, Joseph's son. Unfortunately, it wasn't named Joseph. Moise went south to Montana to find Louis Riel. Louis Riel, in the meantime, he'd been to Montreal, he had some mental health issues, and he ended up going to Montana, where he had married another Métis lady, and he was a teacher in a little one-room schoolhouse. And Moise came down with 4 men, and they knocked on the door. Salut Louis, comment ça va? Nous avons besoin de toi là. Il faut venir avec nous. And they said, Louis, you need to come with us. You need to join with us. And they were speaking Michif. Merci. Venez. Come. And they were telling Louis to come with him, and he eventually, after he thought about it for a while, he said, "You know what? It's nice here in Montana. It's nice in this one room schoolhouse, but maybe I can really do something to help my people, and I can offer my assistance." And he came back to Canada, and so he ended up, arriving in Batoche, and he ended up staying at the Willette household with old Joe Willette, who he had known back in the Red River, who he was friends with back in Winnipeg. And so they were talking, and Louis was kind of talking about his Bill of Rights again, his petition to the Canadian government about, the basic human rights of the people of this territory to live their lives, to not have those rights infringed upon, their rights, their language, their culture, their land, what makes us humans, to have our own freedoms. And they sent a petition, and in the meantime, it kind of started getting a little heated, and there was a general, his name was Gabriel Dumont, who many people in Saskatchewan know about as well, who is one of the finest warriors. And he was starting to team up with Poundmaker. He was teaming up with Big Bear. And there was also many other warriors that he was working with. And they started talking about how their rights were being infringed upon, how the land was being taken unjustly by these newcomers that had no connection and were killing indiscriminately, the buffalo, who were, destroying the lands, draining some of the places where people could do some of their hunting, draining the some of the marshes, and altering the lifestyle that people were used to. And so anyways, the government decided, in Canada, instead of what would you do, you feel your rights have been infringed upon, let's not sit down and have a conversation about this, let's not negotiate, let's send some soldiers and we will defeat you on the battlefield. And so Canada rounded up 5,000 soldiers from Quebec City, the Voltigeurs in Quebec City. They rounded up the Queen's Rifles in Ontario. They came to Winnipeg, and they got the Royal Winnipeg Rifles as well. They had them, and they marched off. They got store clerks, they got office people, they got people who couldn't shoot, couldn't ride, didn't know the land, had no idea what it is they're getting into, and they arrived in Winnipeg, and then the train hadn't been completed, the railway, so they had to then start trucking across the rest of Saskatchewan on foot, and this is hard work. This is a tough slog. And eventually you get to Batoche, and I don't know if anyone's been near Batoche, but it's a lot of rolling hills. It's very beautiful, majestic. It's like the Qu'Appelle Valley a little bit. Very, very, very beautiful. And what ended up happening at this point is, things had kind of moved a little quicker. Raids had been made on certain towns. And, there was a lot of hatred of the English, the Orange men, very racist individuals who believed in supremacy of the white race, who wanted to destroy other races, make sure that they were subservient. This wasn't just a question about, lawful authority. This was a question of one race or one group of people believing that they were inherently, meaning they're genetically superior to all others, and we're going to impose that superiority on everyone else. And it didn't matter, who you were or where you were. If you were not part of the club or part of the master race here, you were going to be in for it. And so the battles started, and there were actually 7 battles. And people thought that they were going to roll over the First Nations peoples and the Métis, going to crush them on the battlefield. And do you know what ended up happening, Winston?
Yeah, there was a lot of battles, and all the Métis could fight. They could hunt.
They could fight. They could ride hard.
Yeah,
the Indians they were the allies as well. They were riding hard. We, we defeated them on the battlefield. There was at the similar time, actually, in South Africa, a few years earlier, in the 1880s, 1881, the British Army had been defeated by the Zulus. And it was the first time the British Army had been defeated by an indigenous group or a tribe. The Zulus charged and they literally wiped out one of the armies. And because the Europeans always thought we're so superior. Look at our technology. Look at our uniforms. It is God's will that we are the master race, and we will rule the whole world from sunrise to sunset. This world is for us. And they came to Saskatchewan and they were defeated 5 times. Notawis. They were defeated 5 times by the Métis and the First Nations. They were defeated at Frenchman's Butt. They were defeated at a place called Fish Creek. Fish Creek was a battle. Their General Middleton was watching the what was happening on the battlefield, and time again he had to withdraw his soldiers, and it was only because of the restraint of Louis Riel, who really wanted to sit down and negotiate, and of Gabriel Dumont, who said, Louis used to tell Gabriel Dumont, please, s'il vous plaît, ne tuez pas tout le monde. Please do not kill everyone. We want to build a peace. We want to negotiate with them. We need to work with them. And the English didn't understand why sometimes the Métis would withdraw from the battle or let them escape. Because literally these were store clerks that had no idea how to ride horses, couldn't shoot straight. But these, the First Nations and the Métis, they could bang, they could shoot straight, and they could, get their mark every time. They were skilled warriors, dangerous on the battlefield. And they exercised so much restraint. They wanted peace like Poundmaker. We know that he was exonerated because he was, convicted as being a traitor to Canada. But they just exonerated him 2 years ago now, I believe.
I think 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And because, it was an unjust trial, and he was a person who was looking for peace. So anyway, there were 7 battles. One was a draw, and then there was a final battle. And they were at Batoche in May, and the battle started on May 12th. And the Métis had built trenches, they had built barricades, they had built all sorts of ways to kind of slow down the oncoming British soldiers, somewhere in their red scarlet uniforms, for heaven's sakes. And the battle is getting started. And just imagine the difference. The English are there; they're only have themselves to care for, and all they're fighting for is the superiority of their race. Now the Métis, and there were some First Nations there at this battle of Batoche. There was about 300 against 5,000 English soldiers, 300 plus or minus warriors who were fighting. They're fighting for their women, their children, their homes. They're fighting for everything at that moment, because their women and their children are in the village at the exact same time. And so the battle is raging, and it goes on not just for 1 day, not 2, it's in the 3rd and now the 4th day. And the Métis are shooting, and General Middleton is watching this battle, and they can't get close because every time one of the English soldiers pops up or gets into a position where he can kind of move forward a little bit, gets shot, gets taken down. So Middleton is actually looking at the battle on the 4th day, and he's thinking to himself, it's time to sound the retreat. It's, I think we need to back up, because we might lose this battle. We've lost already 5 times. I don't want to be a general that's lost, the overall war to this rag band group of savages, which is how they really thought. Like, these are the real words. And but there was a major there. His name was Crozier, and Crozier was kind of watching his men. He was in the front line, trying to, give them courage, keep going. And he noticed that, the doctor reported to him that he was taking rocks out of some of the soldiers that had been wounded. And he kind of figured out, oh, the Métis are low on ammunition. They're no longer, firing, like a round musket balls. They're firing rocks. And so there's Joseph, who's there. He's 93 at this point. How old are you, Notawis Winston?
81.
81. So imagine 12 years from now, or 12 years from now, you're fighting. You're in a battle. You've got a gun and you're fighting. I could see you doing it. I know you would do it if you had to. You would be a brave warrior for sure. That's quite old. And he was fighting there. And, there was his son, Moise, who was, younger in his 50s. And he had his young son as well, who was Baptiste, going around. And Baptiste was going down to the riverbank because the North Saskatchewan River flows along. And he was picking up the rocks and the pebbles with some of the other children. And Baptiste, I believe, was about 11, 10 years old at that time, bringing the rocks and the pebbles to his father and the other warriors so they could have something good to shoot. In the meantime, the Métis actually had won part of the battle. They had actually defeated there was a battleship or a boat that the North caught, that the English had brought along the North Saskatchewan, a paddle boat with guns on it, and they had actually disabled it by running a cord across the river, and they had destroyed its smokestack, and it couldn't generate enough heat. It was kind of just floating in the river, just listing badly in the river, and no longer useful to the battle. Now imagine, there's Moise. He's filling up his gun, and it takes about 30 seconds. You pop a little bit of, you have your musket. Imagine a long musket, and you put some gunpowder in one end, and then you have this long rod, this long stick, and you jam it in, and you pack it down, and you put in a little bit of your bullet, your musket ball. Put that in, a little bit more gunpowder. You raise it up. You pull back the flint. You put a little bit of gunpowder, just a tiny bit to start a spark, and then you pull the trigger, and it goes bang. And it takes about 30 seconds, a minute and a half to load a rifle properly every time, because there's a whole process to go about it. And, the Métis are extremely quick. They're able to do it in 30 seconds. Now, so 30 seconds is a long time, but the English, they actually had, rifles. They would put a bullet in, bang, bang. So they were doing that over and over and over again, much faster rate, but they were still losing this battle. Imagine how good the warriors are fighting this battle. So this is going on, and the English eventually even bring out a Gatling gun, if you can believe this. You've seen this in the movies. Maybe you've seen this in that samurai film with Brad Pitt, I think, and they got the Gatling gun going. They even have a Gatling gun, and they're still not winning. Like, imagine how good these warriors are. We'll slide down. Okay, they're reloading. Bang! I shot one. Okay, now they're worried, these English. So this is going on. And anyways, Crozier, General Middleton, he sounds this alert. I got my little trumpet here, and he hopefully won't hurt anyone's ears, but he tells his bugler, because they always have buglers on these English people, sound the alert. So they sound the alert and tell everyone, we're retreating. Crozier is listening to this, and he goes, what? I think they're running low on ammunition. They're not shooting very fast. Their rate is slowed. He says, I'm not retreating. He grabs his rapier or his sword, pulls it out, holds it aloft, and he yells, charge! And he starts running across the field, the open field. And the Métis start trying to fire back. And they actually are running very low on ammunition. And rocks don't fly straight. They kind of fly a little crooked. And the other soldiers see this, and they start, charge! Our leader is going forward. Middleton is up in the high ground watching this with disbelief, can't believe what he's seeing. They're disobeying orders, and they're charging. This could be a disaster. but he has no control over it at this point. No one's listening to him. They're charging across this open field. And now they're in hand-to-hand combat in these trenches with the Métis. You know, they're fighting hand-to-hand, and the Métis are starting to move back by trench, from section to section, to closer and closer to the village. And if you go to the village today at Batoche, you can still, there's a church is still standing. You can still see the bullet holes in the church. The bullet holes are all still there in the church. You can still see where the English have been shooting. In the meantime, as the fighting is hand to hand, you know, the men are literally have on bayonets, and they're knifing each other now, fighting very ruggedly and hard. Louis Riel is actually at the village, and he's got the women and the children with him, and he's praying. He's got a large cross, and they're praying and they're singing as the bullets are flying over their heads. Imagine they're singing church hymns. Abide with me, love, you know, or Amazing Grace, or, you know, Eternal Father. You know, any of these, you know, these church hymns, you know, they're singing, or Prière de la Famille, you know, any of the French ones. So this is going on, and this is like real Canadian history. This is what really happened. You know, people, you know, were trying to defeat women and children. So the battle is now actually, it's left the trenches, and Gabriel Dumont comes up to Louis, and Louis says, you know, Dumont says, you know, I can't hold the line very much longer. And Louis says, you know what, tell the men they can leave with their women and children. So they actually, the men start taking their women and children and going into the brush and leaving as quick as they can to escape. And, you know, around Red Pheasant, there's a lot of big bushes and stuff like that. So this is where the men were going to take their families to hide and get away as quickly as they could, regroup later on, make sure that they were safe from these, you know, these savage soldiers, because these soldiers were, you know, uncivilized, and who knows what they would do. You know, they're insane. So, so this, you know, there is now the hand-to-hand, and Moise comes into one of the houses, and there's his father, old Joe Willette, and he's got his musket, and he's firing. And Moise is French for Moses. Moses says to Joseph, his dad, he says, Papa, c'est temps de partir. Viens avec moi. Father, it's time to leave. Please come with me. Come with me. And what happens is that Joseph says, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay and fight. I'm going to stay and fight. And Gabriel Dumont is actually there as well. This is in the records. And Gabriel Dumont says to Joe, please, Papa, Father, please, it's time to leave. Grandfather, please leave with us now. We can keep you safe. We're leaving with the women and children. He says, no, again, I'm going to stay. And so he stayed there in this house. And as Moise was leaving, you could hear the last word that Joe Willette said. He yelled out, his last words were, justice! Bang! And then he was shot. And today he's actually buried in Batoche. He's buried at the, just in the village there. There's a monument to him. He's the oldest person, 93 years old. And he's buried with a young boy as well, who I believe was maybe 12 or 13 years old, one of the youngest warriors to die. So, you know, an extremely sad part of our history. But, you know, one I'm also very proud of, because that is, you know, like, now those are true warriors that, you know, fighting for, you know, for their beliefs, trying to do it with kindness, trying not to, you know, they didn't want to do it because they were malicious or angry. They were doing it because they, you know, were fighting for some, you know, for justice, fundamental freedom. And so they eventually, what ended up happening is they ended up, you know, moving to Battleford. And then, you know, luckily, my grandfather, James Willette, eventually met a beautiful lady from Red Pheasant named Mariah Watini, and they were married. and that's how I'm connected to Red Pheasant. And we all know also the history of the 10 warriors that were killed in Battleford, that were hung in the largest mass hanging in Canadian history, back in November in 1887, I believe, 1885. Anyways, long time ago. So that's the story, Winston.
Yeah, that's always such an interesting story. And I know that all the Canadians that you've been talking to, but the Canadian people that speak English, I know that when they hear it, they just sit there transfixed because their minds are going through that. And maybe some of them, it was their relatives that were fighting, but for us, it was all our people that were fighting. And like you said,
we were fighting for something which was noble. We were fighting for, the land of our ancestors. The land is actually, it's about the land is the blood. It is it is us, because we come from the land feeds us, and then we go to the land. And we've been, for thousands and thousands, since time immemorial, we've been on that land. And so we have a connection to it. And, so you're fighting for that connection, you're fighting for that spirit, and you're fighting for your family, your children, your freedoms, your rights.
That's right. And the way that we are taught is that when the Creator put us here on this land, He put us in a place where there'd be enough food, there'd be enough game, there'd be enough water, there would be enough food for our horses. We would have everything. We didn't need anything else. And we didn't go and take anybody else's land. We didn't go fight anybody for their land. We lived peacefully. And that's the way we were. We were peaceful people. But when we had to fight, we would fight. That's what Poundmaker did. That's why he was exonerated. They finally found out that he only had to fight because the soldiers were coming, and they were going to come and rape the women and kill everybody. And so he had to fight for the land. And the same thing with Louis and the boys there at Batoche. They had to fight for the land. But like you said, the guys that were coming were savages. They were insane. Because once you start killing, you go insane. And you can't stop. That's what happens. And many times we hear stories about that.
Hey, I want to get something for you. I have this bottle of Poundmaker water.
Oh, okay.
Can I go get this bottle?
Right.
It'll take me 2 seconds.
All right. Well, that is Robert Willett, and I knew his grandmother and his grandfather, old Mr. and Mrs. Willett. So that was actually their grandfather, that old Moise Willett that died like that. And Robert tells that story, and it's a beautiful story, showing how we have to fight for our land and how we have to fight for our language, how we have to fight for everything that the Creator has given us. Otherwise, why did He give us, kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I got this beautiful water, and let's see. Here we go.
Here we go. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Poundmaker of the Cree Nation Exoneration Ceremony, May 23rd, 2019, and there he is.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
very proud water, and I keep it. It's kind of a cool little thing here to have some water from Poundmaker Exoneration Ceremony.
Yeah.
Were you there? Weren't you there?
I was there, yes. And I'll tell you what I saw. I saw Edwin Tatusis. And I think Edwin is about maybe 88. And he was riding a horse up to the top of the hill. There was a lot of guys on horseback, and there was wagons.
Yeah.
Edwin was riding a horse, and it looked like that horse had just been broken because he was dancing all the time and trying to jump and everything. And Edwin was sitting on him. He looked really good there, just like that. He just was hanging on to that horse. He wasn't getting excited. He just kept that horse going like that. And Nikki and I were talking words after. And Nikki said, I thought for sure somebody was going to get hurt because that horse looked like it was going to race. But Edwin was a real good horse rider. And also at that ceremony, traditionally we're known as being natural enemies of the Blackfeet people. But Poundmaker went to live with the Blackfeet. And so when he died, they buried him at Blackfoot Crossing. And then when we had the ceremony up there, then there was 3 Blackfoot Chiefs that came. They were big, they were tall, they were strong, and they had beautiful, deep voices. And when they spoke, everybody listened. And they said we loved him too, You loved him, but we loved him too, you know. But he is yours because he was born with you. But we'll take him. And so they took him. And there's a story about that. And are you finished, Robert?
I can always talk more, but no, I'm listening now.
Well, I'll tell the story how Poundmaker became to go and live with the Blackfeet. Okay?
Okay.
And this is a beautiful story too. It shows one of great passion and great belief in the Creator and the hereafter and everything like that. Some of the quick stories are when Indians would get the drop on somebody, and they'd be there with their bow and their arrows like this, and they were doing that to this one guy, and he turned around and he saw them, and he just put his hands down. He started to cry, and they thought they'd never seen that before. Starting to cry is when you're going to get killed. So they put their weapons down. They went in, don't cry, like in the language, don't cry, you know, and they said, and he said, because I thought I was going to see my grandfathers and my grandmothers, and you know, that's why I'm crying. That because he said, I thought I was going to see all my ancestors and everybody right now when I saw you. And I was so happy. I was crying for happiness. Oh, they said, we thought you were crying because you were so scared. No. And they understood because they did the same thing. But anyway, yeah. So when Poundmaker, or not Poundmaker, but when Chief Crowfoot of the Blackfeet, when his son got killed, his wife could not bear the pain of living anymore. She cried all the time. She was always so sad. And after maybe over 3 or 4 years, Crowfoot had seen Poundmaker, and he had thought, he looks exactly like my son. And because, like, as Native people, I've seen a young man. He looked exactly like my youngest son, and I had turquoise rings on, and I had a beautiful one, and I touched him on the heel because we were all lying on the ground, looking under a teepee. They were speaking in there. The elders were speaking in there, and nobody could go in there, so we were all outside listening as hard as we could. And when I saw him, he looked, so I tapped, and he turned around and looked at me, and I took off my ring, and I just handed it to him like this, and he took it, and he understood immediately. He was only about 16. He understood immediately why I gave it. He didn't have to know. I didn't have to say anything, and I just nodded, and he nodded at me. We both went back to listening. But anyway, so finally, Chief Crowfoot, he told his wife, he said, there is a young man, he said, that looks exactly like our son. He lives over there with Poundmaker. And he said, if you want to, we can go there. And she said, yes, let's go. And so they got ready, and early the next morning, they left from Blackfoot Crossing over to Poundmaker in Saskatchewan. That's a long trip with an old lady, like, you know. She wouldn't be young, but maybe 50. But our women could travel long distance. They could travel long distances. They were strong. And they were beautiful. Everybody was very strong and very beautiful. When the first white men came here from England, they said that they have arrived in the land of the gods. They said everybody's at least 6'4", 6'5". They're tall. Their complexion is beautiful. Their hair is beautiful. They're tall. They're straight. They look like gods. They talk like gods. They act like gods. And said even the deer and all those things that normally run from mankind don't even run away from them because they don't kill for nothing. That's what you're grinning.
I like that. We all look very strong and very good.
Yeah, I noticed that you're going like this. We should have had a look at Nathan. He's probably like this, sitting there like that, his arm up like that.
Flexing. He's flexing.
Yeah, flexing his muscles. So
we're going to see the flexing now.
There he is. So they told him that these are beautiful people, and at that time when they first came, we had 600,000 words in our vocabulary. Now we have about maybe I don't know, not that many, if maybe 300,000. And one of the reasons why is when the white man came, he did not understand the spirituality, the deep spirituality that the natives had for everything. They had great spirituality, respect for everything. Because when the Creator put us, he said, you will live here. There'll be everything you have here you'll have enough. and everything here that you see around you will be your brother and your sister. In other words, all the animals, all the trees, the grasses, and in the grasses are all the medicines. You'll know where all the medicines are. In the trees, there's medicines. In the water, there's medicine. In the mud, there's medicine. There's so much medicine. And in the sky, the rainbow, the clouds, the winds, medicine. And so they were happy. They didn't have to fight. They were happy. And they had a beautiful government. Their government was very, very strong. There was no stealing from anybody, no calling anybody down. Everybody worked together. And plus, the chiefs were well respected. The knowledge people were well respected. The pipe was respected. The spirits were respected. They had ghost dances and sun dances. Everything was respected in such a beautiful way. And then when a linguist came later on after that, and he came with the Cree, and he wrote back home and he said, "This is the most perfect language in the world, Cree. It's perfect. You've never hear a Cree man stutter. He will just talk in that language. You don't stutter. You just talk all the way through. Even if you talk for 45 minutes, you'll never hear an Indian speaking Cree stutter." And he said, "This is the most perfect language in the world. It's when they talk to you, you know exactly what they're saying." And so that's why the land was so perfect. I was over in the area of Betosh, and I knew the story well. And I was on horseback, and I was waiting for somebody. So I was riding around, and my heart felt so sad because I looked at that land was so beautiful, such a nice feeling coming from there. And that just to think that everybody was on horseback, that river is where they caught fish, and that big hill where handsome warrior, he died there, and he fought, and all the farmers came out, the militia from Prince Albert came out, soldiers came out, everybody came out just to kill an Indian. And every time, so everybody was just shooting at him, and they would every once in a while a bullet would come from inside the bushes there. There's 3 Indians in there, and every time somebody would shoot, one of the Indians would shoot, somebody would fall over dead, sometimes with a bullet right in their head like that, or somewhere. And and Spotted Calf was his mother. And when he was fighting, she trilled, the Indian trill. She would trill like that. I can't do it, it's too high. But
I'd love to hear.
Well, we haven't. You will hear it. You will hear it if you want. You'll hear it pretty soon.
I'm teasing you. I'm trying to get you to sing.
Somebody that has a beautiful, beautiful trill. And my sister Mary had a beautiful trill. And this is a lady. She's in Ottawa right now, but she has a beautiful trill. And there's women on Red Pheasant that have beautiful trills, but they help. It was to encourage the men, to give them encouragement to fight and not to give up like that. So we have a beautiful history. I know we have a beautiful history. I know that we were good warriors, and I know that we respected, and that was part of our downfall, which we had so much respect for everybody. We didn't just fight for nothing or say, "This is our land. Come on, let's fight. This is our land." We didn't.
There was no such thing as total warfare.
Yeah, exactly.
Total warfare is the idea that you annihilate your enemy and you leave it a wasteland. You salt the earth. You take the salt and you spread it so they can't even grow crops afterwards, which is a very kind of a very Western medieval type of warfare. Like you'll massacre the entire village. You'll massacre every living soul in order to cleanse it of your enemy.
Yeah, that's right. And so that happened, but that never happened with us. As a matter of fact, we have many stories from war parties, and they would fight as hard as they could. But then when it was too much, the one that was getting really beaten up, you would have to go. You'd have to run. And there's a story like that happening, that one of the warriors racing back towards Saskatchewan, or towards the Indians living over here fighting the Blackfeet, he got hit in the back with an arrow as they were racing away. And the others they couldn't stop for him, and he told them, "No, keep on running." He said, I'll find a place to die." And so the others, they hated to do that, but they kept on going. So he was down by a creek is where he finally lay down. He lay down there by the creek in the mud. There was nice soft mud there. He lay there in the mud, and as he was lying there in the mud and kept trying to get that arrow out of his back, And so he'd push it in a little bit farther all the time so he could come out here, so where he could finally pull it out. And as he was doing that, after about the third day, somebody said to him, "Boy," he said, "you really got hurt badly. You got an arrow right in your back." And he said, "Yeah, stop with." And the other one said, "Do you want me to help you get it out?" "Yes," he said. And that other one said, "There's mud here." He said, "It's sacred mud. I'll get it. Here, I'll help you get that arrow." So he pushed that arrow from the back, and the warrior, he pulled that arrow from. They finally got that arrow out, so it bled really good. Then that frog, he started getting mud, and he filled that hole up with mud from the front and the back. And then he said, "Okay," he said, "take about 3 days, you'll be able to move around again." So there are a lot of fish in there. So after 3 days, that man was able to move, and he got a fish, and he ate. And then after that, the frog brought him berries and whatever else he could find me. And in a week's time, that man was able to move around. That medicine is now here in Saskatchewan. Well, we're in Manitoba. It's in Saskatchewan. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's, and I think it's up on Poundmaker, where Poundmaker Reserve, Indian land there. And so, like, we all had these medicines, and so we had everything. And that's why that guy said we were a very superior race, perhaps the most superior race in the world, because we had everything was given to us like that. And so that's who we are. So when I meet people, I don't look to see if they have any money, or I don't look to see if they're rich, or if they have a really nice car or anything like that. I look first of all at their heart, and I can see the heart in the people. If they're good people, I can see that, and they can see many times that that I am very spiritual also, because we're all very spiritual. But some of us, especially the Indian people, that we are more spiritual. We're spiritual just like the Creator gave us to be very spiritual. We're like that. I'm not saying we're more spiritual than anybody else, but I'm just saying that our language is superior, our way of thinking is superior. Everything we do, there's rhyme and reason to it, And like you got that doctorate and those 2 masters, and you've been always up on top of everything, not by accident. It's because you were put here on this earth to be on top of everything. Just like I was put here to be a musician, to go around the world singing and healing people. We are who we are, and when we're doing really, really well, it's not by accident. It's because that's who we're meant to be. Just like Nathan's little niece there, she's made to be that very, very, very intelligent. So that universities all over the United States want her, the biggest ones, and we see many people like that. And in every race, there's people like that. They're not there by accident. They're there because the Creator put them there, so they could do something good. Every race. And when you think of it like that, it makes a lot of sense. And then the other thing is this, like I was teaching the Native students in Pembina Trail School Division. And one time I took my drum in there, and I had about 15 drums in my arms anyway, I think in a tub. And they said, "What's that?" I said, "Drums, we're going to sing today." And they said, one of them said, "I haven't even seen a drum. This is the first time I've seen a drum." Another one said, "I've never even heard them sing. I don't even know what the singing is like." Another one said, You expect me to sing? I've never sang. I don't know anything about it. I've lived in town all my life." No, I said, "That's okay." I said, "I'm glad that you say that. I'm glad that you don't know anything about it. Because in 20 minutes after we start to sing, you're going to be singing at the top of your voice." And they said, "I doubt it. I doubt it." They just sat back. Anyway, so I sang a real easy song. And that song was one of Edmund Bull's. And it goes like this. I said, "Just repeat after me if you can." So I did. So I did this first of all. Play your drums like this. So they could all do that. And then I said, "Now play like this." So they all tried to do that, and they all got that. Then I knew they'd be able to sing this song. And they said, "Why are we singing then if it's not for us?" I said, "It's for your ancestors. When we start to sing, because I've already smudged these drums, and you can still smell the smoke here. And when I start to sing, all of your ancestors will start singing. And that is what we call blood memories. And you all have the blood memories of your ancestors singing. You were your ancestors. You are your ancestors. You will sing as soon as I start. Within 20 minutes, they'll all be singing." So I started like this. Yeah, 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 hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. And within 20 minutes, everybody was singing. Oh, it was amazing. And then all the kids in the school, there's about 14,000 kids in that school, as they'd come by, they were all in the window like this. They were just right there like that. And all those guys inside, they were just singing as loud as they could. And then afterwards, they were so surprised they could sing like that because we have blood memories. And that's what you have. You have strong blood memories. And also Nikki, you're going to meet Nikki there. She's going to ask you a few questions. Well, I won't tell her what you are, but she's just a beautiful woman with horses. And Nathan, he's also very beautiful. And I hope some people will write in here and ask Robert questions, myself and Nikki. Yeah. Oh, Azur Tawe Moyen.
Sorry. We're back here. Just let me move this banner here real quick. Awesome, you guys. Wow. Robert
And
and
you have any questions, Nathan?
yeah, no, I'm just trying to just give me a sec here.
He's the producer.
Yeah, I'm doing like 8 things at once. Yeah, go like this.
Yes, strong.
It's great to, you know what? It's great to hear those stories, you know, especially the Battle of the Batoche, and you know, coincident when you're telling your stories there about Chief Helmaker and
Well, they're
everybody.
actually all connected, those stories, because they're connected with Red Pheasant, they're connected with our people, even though they were happening maybe a few hours away or a certain distance. You know, the battles were the same, and the Allies were all working together in a coordinated way, you know, defending a lot of the same rights. You know, in many cases, the same results, unfortunately. But it seems that it just took us 150 years, and we're now getting to where we want to get to.
Yeah, no, that is true. And that's why we're doing these Indigenous storytelling and not just, you know, from our perspective here in the Treaty 6 area. We're branching out and we're hearing stories from as far as we can. And there's always a connection somehow to when people are telling them, you know, like, for instance, we had a Dene speaker on from far up north in the BC, where was he from? Fort Chipon, or wherever it is, far up north in BC somewhere.
That was Fort Chip,
yeah. And then you know, there was that connection to the Crees, you know, so you know, there was that I mean, that's literally the storytelling. When you hear the stories, you know, like I said, it's always good to get refreshed on the history, and then plus learn more. But at the same time, how these stories always connect us in some way, and that's kind of what's happening here, right? Like, just there's always a connection somewhere.
There's something I want to throw in there. When I was 13 years old in 1953, we were playing down at the just south of the Fort Battleford. There's a fort there, and the Battle River runs by there, and there's some springs there. They're good springs, and we used to climb the trees and go from tree to tree, see how far we go, stuff like that. And I was racing through the bush, and I hit something hard, and I tripped, and I went back and I uncovered it, and it was 13 cannonballs piled up like this. And that was where the Northwest Mounted Police were going to catch one of the guys there from Palmacre or Little Pines. He had a son that was married to one of the women at Batoche. And so he was a big bear, and he was going to go over there and help his son fight. And so you traveled wherever there were watering holes, and you always knew where all the watering holes were. Beautiful water.
Yeah.
So they had a set to trap there, but it didn't work. They trapped me instead.
Awesome. Yeah, no, like I said again, it was it's always great to hear the stories. But could we get a song, Uncle? Could we get a song?
What song
you feel like? Hey, whatever you feel like singing.
Now, you want a song on his drum, or you want a song on his guitar?
Oh, hold on. We got a question here, and then we'll get right to it. What brought you to politics, Doctor, and what did you feel as was the biggest obstacle to educating urban Indigenous peoples in Canadian politics? I guess that was for you there.
Well, while Winston thinks about what he wants to sing, so in 2014, actually, I was a prof at the University of Manitoba, and I was looking at the city. I was kind of studying it from an anthropology perspective, the indigenous person studying the white population, which is kind of the opposite of usually how it goes. Usually it's an anthropologist, non-indigenous anthropologist studying an indigenous population around the world. And so I'm writing and doing some research about it, looking at how the interactions between the different social groups in the city. And I kind of put out, I was complaining to someone, a friend, and I said, like all the things I was finding. He said, "Oh, stop complaining about it and do something." And I said, "What could I do?" And he said, "Well, you could run." So I put out an email to about 100 people asking what I should do, if I should run, or if I should not run, and if the city would be accepting of someone who's First Nations running for political office in the city of Winnipeg. Because Maclean's called Winnipeg the most racist city in Canada at one point. I don't know if people remember that in 2016. And I got probably about 50 people back saying, "Don't run. It's not going to turn out very well." I had about probably 40 people getting back and saying, "Yeah, you could probably run, but you'll never win." And I probably had maybe like 3 or 4 people who wrote back and said, "Yeah, you could run, and we think you could win." And so I actually started running in 2014 to become the mayor of the city of Winnipeg. And I'll finish with one little quick story. I don't think actually sometimes it's I think ourselves, we're actually very qualified. Sometimes we just don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that we can do certain things, that we have the ability to change not only our lives, but the lives of everyone in our communities, wherever we're living. And I often think about, Battleford in this case. And I think about what's, like, for instance, there's that big sports center, and I'm not sure how that sports center is doing there, if it still costs a lot of money to get in there, but I know if things cost a lot of money, it comes a form of segregation. To those who have and those who don't have. And I kind of wonder, what type of cities, what type of communities we actually want to live in. If we want to live in a community where we're segregated, where certain people have access to certain things and others do not. And that's kind of what motivates me, because I look at my relations of my growing up and I think to myself, I didn't have a lot when I was younger. Sometimes, I had really, I had shoes that were falling apart, or, clothes that had holes in them, or only, going to high school and only having one change of clothing, having to put my clothes in a garbage bag, take it down on the city bus to a laundromat to sit there for the afternoon. And my mom saying, "Well, when I grew up, we used to put our laundry in the sit around, just in our underwear, doing our laundry to make sure we got as much as we could out of that one load." And so that's kind of what motivates me. But when I was running for mayor, this one little story, I'm sitting looking for my nomination papers to be signed, and I'm outside of the co-op in kind of one of the suburbs, a non-Indigenous neighborhood. And, I have a friend, she's helping me out. She's also Indigenous. And she was standing there with me, an older lady. And, we're trying to get signatures, because you need signatures to be nominated, 500. And I had one guy walk by and he said, "I'm not going to sign that. I don't even want to talk to you. I know who you are, and you're part of the problem of this city." And I said, "What do you mean?" And I asked him, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you're one of those Indians, and you're part of the problem in our city. You cause all the crime, you cause all the all the homelessness in the city is because of you. All the problems that we have are to you people, and we don't need one of you running our city." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but let me tell you a little bit about myself. In fact, actually, I'm a professor at the University of, I said, actually, I'm in the military. And I was in the reserves at the time. I said, I'm in the military for 19 years. He said, oh, thank you for your service to our country. It's good. I didn't know that you could serve in the military. Oh, yes, I'm in 19 years, medical unit and an infantry unit, and I'm in the Naval Reserves today. Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your service to our country." And then I said, well, then he said to me, oh, you're not educated. We need someone who's got a good education. I said, I have a 2 master's degree and a PhD from Laval University. And I'm a professor at the University of Manitoba. Oh, I didn't know you could get so much education. Like, oh, don't, no worries. Well, you're just not very good. You have a lot of social problems. Well, I don't drink. I have 5 beautiful children. I look after my children. I care about my children. I pay my taxes because I live in the city and I don't work on reserve. And I'm explaining all this, to him. And I have ideas for our city. He said, well, I'm not going to sign your nomination papers. I'm still not interested. Let me think about it. I'm going to go to my coffee group at McDonald's tomorrow, and I'm going to talk to my friends about it. Because they have these coffee groups for the seniors. He said older gentlemen sitting around. I guess they sit around drinking coffee, talking about reading the Winnipeg Sun or the Calgary Sun or Edmonton Sun, talking about all the problems. And anyways, they had this debate later on, and it's a CJOB. It's a talk show radio debate, and it was all the mayoral candidates, and they had a huge crowd of a couple hundred people. And it's live, and they had just included me because I was at 3 or 4% in the polls, and I was above a city councilor, and they wanted to include the city councilor because who they thought was a credible candidate, and they said, well, we'll include Robert because he's actually at the polls of this person, and so they added me on, and I went through the debate, hammering away, speaking, using the spirit of our ancestors to speak, thinking about Luriel, Poundmaker, Chifa Watani, and how they would speak and trying to speak from the heart, how we're taught to give speeches. And so I finished it. And afterwards, and I think I actually won the debate. I'm going to toot my own horn there. I won the debate. And afterwards, the same guy came up and he said, you know what? I've decided I'm actually going to vote for you. You've changed my mind. You've actually convinced me that, one of you First Nations could actually run our city and do a good job at it. And you have enough passion to help everyone. And I think when you think about that is what, we need in politics and how we actually, I could yell at the guy. I know it's easy to yell and it's fun to yell at someone sometimes and tell them that, bugger off and, F some this and, but at the end of the day, how, if you salt the earth, there's no ability to, to work together. And I know it takes a long time to get there. I know some days, people are very disagreeable sometimes. People are sometimes very racist. But, you got to find, the way of connecting with everyone to make sure that, we demonstrate our commonalities, what we share together. And that's kind of what what kind of drives me in politics. It's not always easy because it sometimes puts me off key with, First Nations people. Sometimes it puts me off key with non-Indigenous peoples, and I get kind of bombarded from both sides, shot at. And then I was in Ottawa with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and so, he's not always doing the right thing. And some days he's doing the right thing. Most of the time he's doing the right thing. But, then you get shot, with arrows from that side. So look like a porcupine sometimes. But you keep doing it because I believe in our stories and our history, our common history of, stories of Batosh, the stories of Poundmaker, of Big Bear, of our peoples and what they were fighting for. They weren't just fighting for, a $5 payment. They were fighting for something larger, which had a connection, to their ancestors and to their, their great grandchildren. All right, I hope enough off the soapbox, as they say.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, son, because you taught me something I didn't know before. The next time I argue with somebody, I'll stop right away and I'll talk the way that you talk. Because if I want to salt the earth, I can't do it by yelling and fighting. I have to talk.
What you do is you actually turn off their mind. People only want to argue. When you start arguing with someone, they want to argue back because they have to defend their point because they feel they're being attacked. So it's kind of like a psychology thing. Like, how do I get, what's the underlying values of this person that we share? And you kind of have to, kind of find that often. And it's like Luriel, he literally told Gabriel Dumont, don't kill all those soldiers. We want to negotiate with them.
Yeah.
Gabriel Dumont could have said, I'm going to go out and shoot everyone. Like, we're going to annihilate them. But then, then what's going to happen? Then they're going to send more soldiers and, it's going to get even more bloody.
Yeah, we had here in Winnipeg, we had the young women, they made a big round dance, and they got permission to go on Main Street with that round dance.
Yeah.
And we went to a dance, Robert. You were there, and I was there. We had our wives with us. And somebody came up and argued with you and found out you're a politician. He said, I own that city. I own that road too. Like, but are you people dancing around the road? And he was really mad. Of course, he was drinking, eh? And so he was mad at that and yelling. And I thought, oh, do I need to help here? I was ready to jump up. But you just start talking to him. Within 5 minutes, you had that guy eating right out of your hand. He just settled right down. And so I guess he, didn't really want to fight, but I guess he thought he had to fight. And the funniest thing was he was from Poland. He wasn't even born in Canada, but he was living here now. He's a Canadian now,
Yeah.
I was admired because of that. Yeah.
So I think you're supposed to sing us a song.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What, you want to sing something together?
Well, I don't know. How does that work? Okay, or is it better just one person singing?
Whatever. I think it'll work. But I'm gonna have to say this will be after this song. We'll have to shut her down because we are getting out early here at our work, and I want to say it. Like I said, Uncle Winston, it's always great to have you on, and I know we're gonna continue this till the end of the month. And Dr. Robert Ouellette, do you like when somebody says your name? Do you got to say the whole thing, or can I just say Dr. Rob?
Robert, yeah, Rob. Dr. Rob is good.
Dr. Robert Falcon Ouellette, yeah.
Sometimes people just call me the Falcon or FR.
The Falcon?
Yeah, RFO.
Where's the Falcon? Anyway, sounds like a Star Wars thing. Get the Falcon. We need him. There's something out here. We need to come calm him down. Yeah, maybe you have the Force when that's what you're doing. You're going in there and no one sees it, but you're going like this. Be calm. With the Force. Yeah, if you guys see Dr. Falcon going like this, he's got the Force when he's talking to people.
We will stay 2 more hours talking. We will not touch the podcast.
That's all for now, folks. Yeah, I man, I'm really.
Have you got your drum? Do you have your drum?
Yeah, I have a drum. I have to go get it.
Yeah, just grab it there. We'll sing something together.
Yeah. But I just want to close it out. I want to say thank you guys again for joining in and in the comments there. As you're awesome that you're always watching these and staying tuned. Yvonne Marie, this was awesome. Learned a lot about other nations. And this is exactly why that comment right there, boom, spot on, that we're always learning, no matter where the story's coming from, far and wide, even near, that we're always learning about other nations and also our own. But with that, you guys, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, or today, not tonight. I'm going to leave this out with
Happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is it Chinese New Year? Happy Chinese. Is it?
Yeah, we got year of the rat with the plague, and now we're into the year of the ox. Strong.
Oh, let us hope, eh? Let us hope. Okay, you guys, we're out that. Any closing words you want to say?
No, I just want to thank you for joining us today, Dr. Robert Falcon Ouellette.
The Falcon.
And you too, Winston. It's always awesome to see you, and we've got to visit more in the last few weeks, Winston, than we have all year. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yes, it's almost as good as having you here in our kitchen.
Hey, that's right. Yeah.
I hope you invite me to this kitchen.
Yes, you're welcome anytime. That's for sure. All right. Well, thank you guys for stopping by, and we enjoyed every bit of it, as our listeners did as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. No, on the 22nd we'll be back. All right. I hope.
I have a short story for you. When we went to when Chief Red Pheasant Medal was brought back to Red Pheasant, and there was a lot of people. All of Kakioni Wahoma Kantek were there. All my relations were there, and everywhere. And we were all inside this tent. And so the chief was introducing everybody, and This is the Watney Singers. Forget what they were called, and everybody had some kind of degree, bachelor or something like that, and everybody was just there talking like that, and the chief, or not chief, but Gerald McMaster came in and said, and Dr. McMaster is going to be talking, and to introduce him is our MC, and he went like this, and he softly looked at me and said, Dr. Winston Watney, and all the people that were there talking, they all went like this. And they went,
Cha, like that.
even all the RCMP were laughing. Everybody started laughing. Oh, we had fun there. All right, then, Robert, you know this song.
All right, you guys take it away, and we will see you guys all next week. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, that's the wrong song, Robert. That's not the one that I wanted to sing.
it's a song I've never heard before.
Yeah, yeah.
You said,
what
you know
is
this
that?
one. Oh, yes.
Okay, wait a minute. You know this one. I'll just get into it. Try this one. Let's do this one, Robert. We both know this one. Then we can get into that other song there when after it, at the end of it. Okay. No, that'll be the introduction for this song, and this song is When the Sun Sets Over the World. You know that one. Hey, 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 yo, hey, when the sun sets over the world, I'll be thinking of you. I know you are far away. No matter where you are, I still love you just the same. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's almost like sounding like you're singing it yesterday and I'm singing it tomorrow. There's a delay there, right? Did you have a delay on your screen?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I had a delay. Anyway, Robert, son, I'll say, so nice to see you. The name you was into a bumpkin. And everybody else out there, hi, ninanaskum to none if you take you all. Hey, hey.
Tapwe akitwam.
Ah, that way. Okay. Thanks for coming.
So how do we get off? We just push the button?
Yeah.